If you like the King's Indian, then you're going to love this game. It's absolutely spectacular. Some beautiful ideas in it. So this was played in the FIDE Grand Swiss tournament. And it's a battle of two teenagers. Shreyas Royal plays for England. He's 14 years old and he's playing against Volodar Murzin, 17 years old. And he's playing under the FIDE flag. Well, he's Russian. So here we go. I mean, this is such a tough tournament. You know, both these players not having an easy time. Although, I mean, Shreyas Royal actually, you know, he's rated just over 2,400. Actually, he's close to getting another Grandmaster norm. So he's actually having a good tournament. King's Indian. Here we go. White claims the centre. Everything normal so far, and h3. Now, I really like this way of playing for white. So we've got this familiar locked pawn centre. So white has a space advantage, and black in the King's Indian often likes to remove this knight and then play for f5 and get a kingside attack. Now, what I like about h3 is that you're not going to put your king on g1, you're going to hang back with the king for the moment, and you're going to play g4 and possibly take the initiative on the king side yourself, and very often white's king castles queen side. I've always liked playing like this because it seems to me that this sort of counters black's sort of natural idea of going for an attack himself, and I feel that it kind of cuts across black's plans. Now, I've looked at this variation before on the channel. You might remember some of the games that went with a5. But Murzin plays knight a6 to get to c5 very quickly. g4, expanding on the king side. Knight c5, attacks this pawn. And f3. You don't want to give up your bishop for that knight. That's not good. Then the bishop on h6 will one day come into the game. c6, black perhaps looking for counterplay on the queen side because very often white's king wants to castle queen side. So that's normal. Perhaps the queen might come out here. Perhaps black is just looking to open the c file and get a rook to c8. Queen d2, and that's a very normal setup. The queen and bishop take control over this diagonal, and that could be useful later on. And you never know, white's king might head to that side of the board. Black exchanges on d5, c takes. So white maintains this nice space advantage. And black plays very directly here, knight e8. Aiming to get in f5 as quickly as possible. So this is really, you know, the sharpest way of playing for black. And white has quite a choice here. You know, do you castle queenside immediately? Do you develop the king side with knight e2? You could even push that knight away. Shreyas plays h4, which also feels like a very logical move. You know, you want to try and attack on the king side, and it might lead to an attack, or it might just cramp black. And f5. So already after just 12 moves, we have a position which is explosive. White's king still in the middle, black counterattacking with the f-pawn. And white has a massive strategic decision to make here. Basically, do you open up the king side, or do you keep it closed? So you can play g5, which takes away squares from the bishop and the knight and really cramps black. Or you can open up the g file and castle queenside. You know, pop the king into the corner, king b1, and bring your pieces out like this. It's really hard to know which is best. I mean, I think this is kind of a matter of taste, which one you go for, a matter of style. Shreyas plays g5. I think, you know, a very nice move. very typical of this variation. You're looking to just cramp these minor pieces. But of course it closes off any attacking ideas for white, at least for the moment, as this pawn just blocks the bishop. Black exchanges. I think if black closes the position like this, then really that's exactly what white wants. By the time you can bring your pieces round to the queen side, the king can even stay on the king side actually. But that's very nice in principle for white. I think it's absolutely correct that black just tries to open the position. Bishop g4. Yep, looks nice. Preventing castling queenside, and the bishop looks active. Bishop e2. Yep, good idea to exchange that off. Bishop takes e2 and knight g takes e2. Well, from white's viewpoint, good to exchange off that light squared bishop. It's a very active piece. From black's viewpoint, you can see that this square is available for black now. Maybe that pawn is just a little bit weaker now that there's no light squared bishop to potentially defend it. Both sides have gained something there. Rook c8 looks normal, so in developing the bishop, then black has been able to bring the rook to the c file, which is obviously important because it kind of discourages white from putting the king on c1. Well, here there's obviously an immediate tactical issue because of knight takes, and there's a pin there. So white has something of a dilemma here. At some point you're going to have to decide, where do you put your king? At the moment, where does it go? Can't go queen side, obviously can't go king side. It's a tricky one. For the moment, Shreyas just plows on with h5. Strategically, it would be very nice to put that bishop on h8, and then how on earth is that actually going to get into the game after that? So h5 has a direct strategic threat, and you might be able to exchange on g6 sometimes, but it's basically about playing h6. Black plays rook f3. Yeah, counterplay. It also allows that bishop to drop back to f8. So, if white were to play, let's say, h6, then that bishop bounces around to e7, and that g5 pawn is potentially a target. So rook f3. And here, rook h4 played. I might return to this position because this is such an important moment in the game, because if white can somehow maintain this lovely space and squash black, then white could have a strategically winning position. So I'll come back to this position at the end. Rook h4 played, and now black comes up with an incredible idea that looks so weird. Bishop h6. So really strange. Obviously that can't be taken because of queen takes rook. It's just, a very curious idea, because it feels as though, this can't be taken anyway. I suppose black is actually threatening to take on e3 and then take on g5. So there is a clear threat. And here Shreyas plays rook h2. Now that's a mistake, and in fact rook h1 would have been a better move. We're about to discover why. So maybe it's time for you to have a little think. Black to play. What did Murzin play after rook h2? And why was rook h2 a mistake? Why would rook h1 have been a better move? This is the thing about the King's Indian, that it can all, that the assessment of the position, the game can just spin on one move. If you look at it with the computer will say, yeah, advantage for white or advantage for black, but you get one move wrong and the whole thing spins on its head. And this is one of those positions where probably white is doing okay. But after rook h2, I'm afraid... Are you ready for black's move? Black to play knight f6. What a fantastic idea. I mean, really visual. You're sort of walking into this fork. Well, if pawn takes knight, then bishop takes bishop is fantastic for black. If pawn takes bishop, now here's the point. Knight g4 with the rook on h2. That's a nasty fork. Bishop g5, queen f8, and this is actually winning for black. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, you've got to bear in mind there's stuff like this happening. It's a really nasty position. Or rook d3 sometimes as well. That's the main threat, of course, as well as the rook. An incredible move. And Shreyas thought for 20 minutes here, but couldn't find a good way out. Bishop takes knight. Now, if rook takes, then you can take that bishop because there's no knight g4. But after bishop takes, this is really clever. This little Zwischenzug, knight g4, attacking the rook. Pawn takes bishop. And knight takes rook, threatening rook f1 mate. So the king escapes. And now this knight bounces round, attacking the queen. And then rook takes bishop. So after that flurry of tactics, black has merged the exchange up. And actually there are no particular complications here. I know the knight looks very oddly placed on f1. In fact, it's doing a brilliant job because it shuts out that rook and controls important squares here. Okay, well, in fact, the rest of the game, in some ways, was a bit of an anticlimax. At least this part of it. I'm wrong about that. There is actually a beautiful finish. Let's see how the game finished. I mean, it's quite clear that black is winning now, but watch how it finished. This is beautiful. Are you ready? Black to play. This one's not too difficult. Rook takes knight. And Shreyas was an absolute gent because he went right to the end and actually allowed his opponent to checkmate on the board. Queen takes queen. Knight d2 check. Of course, if the king goes in the corner, you just take the knight. Rook takes knight. And rook takes knight. Rook takes and checkmate. That was the final position. Well, spectacular idea with this bishop h6 and then knight f6. Let's just go back to that position. Absolutely superb. Bishop h6 and then knight f6. It worked perfectly. Excuse me. But if we come back here, rook h1 was actually a better move because then this wouldn't work. Knight f6 because there's no threat to the rook here. Now after bishop f8, with the idea bishop e7 and knight g7, then I think this position is still just really unclear. But let's go back to this position. So h5 and then rook f3. So rook h4, certainly not the best move. So what should white play here? Well, if you play h6, then yeah, don't want to push the bishop to a better square because then it can threaten g5. But instead, let's just get back here. Well, this rook is a problem. So rook f1 is recommended by my computer. And, well, obviously compared to the game, it's a lot better. I mean, I don't think black really wants to leave that rook on the f-file. So rook takes, king takes. And now this looks a bit drafty down here, queen d7. But in this case, you can play knight g3. And once the king finds safety on g2, covered by that knight. In fact, look at black's minor pieces. I mean, I think this is a really good illustration of how white is using the space very, very well to cramp black's minor pieces. And then this rook can come into the game, and white certainly has a big positional advantage. And yeah, if the queen checks, then the queen can come across to cover. And maybe there's some way that black can try and stir things up here, but this looks like the way to go for white. But really, as I said, such a difficult position and absolutely typical of the King's Indian. You get one thing wrong with either colour and the whole thing collapses. Fascinating stuff. Well, I should just say at the top of the tournament, there are now 6 players sharing the lead on 6.5 out of 9. We've got Nakamura, Caruana, Deak, Vidit, Yesipenko and Maksud Lu sharing first. And we have at the top Hikaru Nakamura playing Fabiano Caruana in round 10. 2 rounds to go. But Nakamura, Caruana, that is the pick of the day. Watch out for that. Thanks for watching.